The day we moved to our new house in the city was filled with excitement. My parents had talked endlessly about the fresh start we were about to experience, and I, being a 12-year-old named Alex, was just thrilled about the large backyard. The first thing I did was throw my football around, letting the wind catch it and send it flying back to me. The freedom was intoxicating. But as days turned into weeks, a lingering curiosity began to claw at the edges of my mind. It was about the house next to ours. It stood there, old and slightly decaying, its paint chipping away, revealing the years it had endured. The curtains were forever drawn, casting a gloomy shadow that contrasted with the other cheerful houses on the block. It was like a dark spot on a bright canvas. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in hues of oranges and purples, I was playing with my dog, Max, when a movement caught my eye. It was subtle, a mere flicker behind one of the windows of that house. I squinted, trying to see clearer, and for a split second, I thought I saw a silhouette, a figure standing, observing. But then it was gone. My heart raced. Was it just my imagination playing tricks on me? Or had I genuinely seen someone? I decided not to tell my parents, fearing they'd laugh it off or think I was making up stories. But as days passed, the feeling of being watched, especially when I was in the backyard, never left me. That night, as I lay in bed, the events of the day replayed in my mind. The mystery of the secluded house next door and its possible inhabitant became an itch I knew I needed to scratch. Little did I know, the coming days would be filled with unsettling discoveries that would forever change my perception of what's normal. Life settled into a rhythm. Wake up, school, homework, play in the backyard, dinner, bed. It was simple, but something about that simplicity felt off. Every time I stepped into the backyard, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I constantly felt like I was being watched. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was just residual paranoia from spotting the figure at the neighbor's window. But then, the feeling intensified. It happened on a lazy Saturday afternoon. The sun was high, and the air was filled with the distant laughter of kids playing in nearby yards. I was engrossed in a book when I felt a pair of eyes on me. I looked up, and to my horror, I saw her, an older woman, her face crinkled with age, staring intently at me through binoculars from her window. My heart raced, thudding loudly in my ears. I dropped my book, and without thinking, I dashed inside, slamming the sliding door behind me. My parents noticed my panic, and I quickly blurted out what I had seen. To my surprise, they dismissed it, attributing it to an overactive imagination. Old Mrs. Jenkins is probably just curious. You know how elderly people are, always peeking out their windows, my mom said with a chuckle. But this wasn't a chuckling matter for me. Every fiber of my being screamed that something wasn't right. The way she watched me, it wasn't mere curiosity. It was something darker, more sinister. Every time I played outside, I could feel her eyes drilling into me, observing my every move. The backyard, which was once my haven, had turned into a stage, and I felt like a performer trapped under the unblinking gaze of a relentless audience. Sleep became elusive. I'd lie awake, imagining what she was doing behind those drawn curtains. Why was she watching me? What did she want? And why didn't my parents believe me? Little did I know that the answers to those questions would be far more chilling than I could ever imagine. The days started to blur, every morning tainted by an ominous dread. As soon as I'd step into the backyard, her gaze would be there, unwavering. It wasn't just the afternoons anymore, it seemed like she had scheduled her entire day around watching me. I felt like a bird trapped in a cage, my every flutter observed and analyzed. Unable to shake off the constant unease, I began to watch her in return. Her routine was clockwork. At 10 a.m., she'd be at her living room window. By 2 p.m., she'd move to the upstairs bedroom, and at 6 p.m., she'd be back downstairs. It was mechanical, robotic almost. There were moments when I would stand defiantly, staring back at her, trying to convey my anger and fear. But it was like looking into the void, emotionless and cold. One evening, fed up and desperate for answers, I decided to confront her. The sun was setting, casting an eerie orange glow over the neighborhood. As I approached her house, the dilapidated exterior seemed even more menacing. The wooden panels creaked under my feet, and the wind whispered secrets I couldn't decipher. I was about to knock when the door suddenly swung open. Standing in the doorway was a man I hadn't seen before. He was tall, towering over me, his eyes cold and calculating. The lines on his face told stories of hardships and possibly dark secrets. Before I could utter a word, he warned, "Stay away from this house, kid. And tell your parents to keep a closer eye on you." His voice was deep and gravelly, every word dripping with menace. The threat was clear, and I didn't need any more prompting. I turned on my heels and bolted back to my house, the weight of his words pressing down on me. That night, sleep was a distant dream. The woman's constant surveillance and the man's threatening demeanor swirled in my mind. I knew I had to do something, but what? Who were these people, and why were they so obsessed with me? After that chilling encounter, I felt like a prisoner in my own home. But there was one person I knew I could trust, one person who would believe me, Mia. We'd been friends since kindergarten, and she had a fierce, protective streak that made her the perfect confidant. Hesitantly, I shared everything with her, from the constant surveillance by the old woman to the threatening man. Her eyes grew wide with every revelation, and by the end, she was seething with anger. "We need to find out what they're up to, Alex," she declared. We hatched a plan. Mia had recently gotten a small camera for her birthday, and we decided to use it to gather evidence. The idea was simple: sneak into the neighbor's yard, take photos, and get out unnoticed. The next day, after school, we went into action. The sun was beginning its descent, casting long, eerie shadows across the houses. With our hearts racing, we carefully navigated the overgrown grass and shrubs of the neighbor's backyard. The silence was almost suffocating, punctuated only by the distant chirping of crickets. As we neared the back door, Mia motioned for me to stop. She pointed to a slightly ajar basement window. Peering through, we were met with a sight that sent shivers down our spines. There was a room, illuminated only by a single, flickering light bulb. The walls were plastered with photos of me, some candid shots of me playing, others zoomed uncomfortably close to my face. There were even pictures of the inside of our house, photos that could only have been taken from someone lurking just outside our windows. Mia, her hands trembling, snapped a few shots with her camera. The gravity of the situation sunk in. These people weren't just creepy neighbors. They were obsessed. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked above us. Panic gripped us as we realized someone was in the house. Without a word, we bolted, not stopping until we reached the safety of my home. Breathing heavily, we looked at each other, the weight of our discovery heavy in the air. We knew we had to act. These people weren't just watching me, they were dangerously obsessed, and who knew what they were capable of. The next morning, with the evidence secured, Mia and I approached the local police station. The officers, initially skeptical, were taken aback by the photographs Mia had taken. They immediately initiated a search warrant for the neighbor's house. Inside, they found more than just pictures. There was a shrine, candles lit around framed photos of a young boy who bore an uncanny resemblance to me. In a dust-covered corner, there was a box filled with letters addressed to the boy, filled with words of longing and despair. The woman was taken in for questioning. Tearfully, she confessed her obsession. Her son, eerily similar in appearance to me, had died in a tragic accident years ago. The pain of his loss had consumed her, pushing her into a vortex of grief and longing. When she saw me, she saw a reflection of her lost son, and in her fractured mental state, she began to believe I was him. Her husband, tormented by his wife's deteriorating mental health, had tried to shield her from the world. He wanted to protect her, even if it meant keeping a young boy at bay. The revelation was a heavy weight on my family's shoulders. We felt a mix of pity and horror for the old couple next door. They had been trapped in their own personal hell, haunted by the ghost of their lost child. The woman was admitted to a psychiatric facility, where she would receive the help she desperately needed. As for us, my parents decided it was best to put up tall, imposing fences around our property, ensuring our safety and privacy. Weeks turned into months, and the events of that fateful day became a distant memory. Mia and I grew closer, our bond strengthened by the trials we had faced together. But every time I looked out of my window and saw the neighboring house, a chill ran down my spine, reminding me of the thin line between love and obsession.